right, everybody. We're sitting here in our buddy Josh Thrash's man cave.
Well, and my bed. This is my bed area for the week.
My Amazon couch.
It's comfy.
Yeah, this thing's sweet. I've been wanting to have Josh on the podcast for a long time. He's our buddy that we met through turkey hunting, and we just always enjoy spending time together. That's why we're here. And we've been hanging out and having tons of hunting conversations, so we finally decided to record it.
Sounds good.
So if you catch any of us looking, we'll give you a little shot of what we're looking at here. It's a pretty cool little setup he's got out here.
Yeah. It is pretty cool. We've got tons of deer, some elk, pronghorn, caribou, duck,
turkey goblin,
goblin,
big alligator skull.
Montana Merriam's.
Yeah, we never even asked about that turkey.
Yeah, that was that's southeast Montana, and that was probably one of the whitest Merriam's I'd ever seen. But the cool thing about that turkey was we chased that turkey a mile before we killed him, and he was going straight away from us the entire time. Ricky, my buddy from North Alabama, and when we popped over a rise, it really wasn't a sit down and call him up situation. Basically, we were chasing him, and he stopped too long one time, and I ended up getting a shot on him when we went and rolled him over. He has 1 7/16 spurs, so for a Merriam, you know, all I'd heard before we went out there was if you kill one that's got 3/4 inch spurs, that's a huge one. So when I rolled him over, I thought I killed a world record. So literally, I got on my phone. You know, I don't keep records of anything, really score or anything, just a rough tape of something every now and again. But I literally got on NWTF website at that right there in the field. I had service to check to see, but he wasn't even in the top 5.
That's
of course, but I was proud of him.
That's hilarious.
Yep.
Sometimes I feel like Merriam's seriously are the most challenging from the standpoint of they just will run like that. They just keep going. The one I shot in South Dakota, that's what he did until he finally got to a point he liked. But then he would never leave there. We didn't call him in. We ended up crawling in.
Well, the first ones the first place I really ever went that was anything other than Easterns was Kansas, and everybody had told me, you know, these turkeys will move. And I was like, yeah, okay. I mean, I understand. You know, our turkeys move here. Our turkeys move a 1/4 mile. That's a long way. Those turkeys up there and out west, they'll move a 1/4 mile in 3 minutes. It seems like, you know.
Doing this one.
Yeah. They know where they're going.
It's honestly hilarious.
But I love hunting out there, though, man. It's a blast. I'm looking forward to getting back out there some. It's been a while.
Are you going this year?
Maybe. It depends on what kind of time I've got. I've got a little bit left to do up in the Northeast, a couple states. I want to get up there and kind of change the scenery after that. But I did get to go to Wyoming last year, but I had been to Wyoming before, so I'm looking forward to doing some new states like you know, further out west, California, Oregon, Washington. Some of that stuff, you know. I hadn't done Colorado, New Mexico. I've got quite a bit out there to do on the West Coast. So.
Yeah, that's something interesting about Josh is that you started doing the whole U.S. Slam thing before it got real popular like it is now. But, I mean, you started probably over 20 years ago, right?
It's probably been about – I really need to look back at that one day because it's taken me a long time. I mean, there are years that I've only been able to – you know, that I maybe only got one state, you know, especially when I started. You know, it really wasn't a thing. There was a guy named Tom Weddle. They call him Doc.
Yep.
And I don't know, he's on his 3rd or 4th, you know. and we've gotten to talk in the last couple of years a couple times, and he's a really neat guy. But I had somehow or another I'd come across him on one of the turkey hunting websites or something, and I already had a state or two, and I was like, you know, that'd be cool just to keep, you know, picking off new states every year. So. And then, of course, Dave Owen got into it, and you know, more and more now it's really not as big a deal anymore. And but I'm close to finishing it up, so I'm gonna try to finish it up, and then I look forward to starting to take these boys back to places that I've you know found. And, you know,
cool.
Get to spend that time with them.
Well, that's definitely something I want to talk about. Is getting your kids involved, and I think that's something that we'll loop back to. What state are you on? How many have you done?
34 or 35. I need to check that again, too. Somebody's asked me that in the last few days, and I did one or the other, so I've got about 14 or 15 left.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What year was it that you started?
I'm going to say it was about, 07 or 08. I think it was closer to 15 than 20 years ago. But like I said, we got invited to Kansas by a friend right down the road, and then just started, one thing would lead to another. I mean, a lot of these have been, I say a lot of them. Some of them have been invites, and some of them have just been, hey, I'm going there, and I pick a spot, or I've heard of a spot or whatever that I want to go. I'm not real technical about the way I go about it. And but I've had pretty good success. I've only been to a few states that I wasn't able to get a bird, that I had to go back.
What are some of those?
Pennsylvania was one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that might be. I went to Tennessee a couple times before I got a bird, but not necessarily because I had to. I had family up there and friends up there. I could basically go anytime because it's a bordering state. But I didn't kill a bird in Tennessee till about the second or the third or fourth time I'd been up there. But got some pretty good connections there with family. It's got some good places around Nashville. So. But I guess Pennsylvania really is the only. That was Rhode Island in the last couple of years. Yeah, I had to go back to Rhode Island.
Was the Pennsylvania one was a weather deal, kind of, wasn't it? It was pretty crummy for a good portion of it.
Yeah, it was. I wish I could blame that totally on it, but I did. I did swing and miss a few times. I actually didn't. Just had some close calls and wasn't able to get it done. And I went back up there late season one year. I actually think the third time I went was when I killed my bird. I was up there with you guys. But late season, I went to Memorial Day weekend. Man, the grass was waist tall and it was hot. It was just miserable. I stayed for like 2 or 3 days, and I've never left anywhere. I was turkey hunting early, and I had taken the family with me. I said, let's get out of here. This is just not fun. It was pretty miserable.
Honestly, that's the way I felt in Maine last year. It was like so hit or miss. It was that June.
First week of June.
And it was just like, I don't know. I'm not like, I'm hoping to turkey hunt when birds are gobbling and doing their thing, and they were kind of pecking, and like you said, the grass was all tall. And not to say that I don't like hunting them. It just was kind of like, well, let's go do some other stuff. So we went and started enjoying the other main things, knowing probably someday I'll swing back through there.
Right. I was in Maine a little earlier. When I went up there, I really enjoyed it. Turkeys are real visible where we were up there, and it was fun. The fun thing about it is most anybody up there will let you hunt, so that's just so different from where we hunt around here,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about traveling to different areas, is seeing the different culture, right? That's my favorite part of traveling to hunt in general, is just seeing how different people do it, and see how fired up people are in one area about it, and how some people, they couldn't care less about a turkey or a deer or whatever it may be, elk. It's crazy just to see the difference, and I feel like that was kind of what are you smirking about?
I'm just thinking in my head about southern turkey hunting culture and how it is a lot different than where I'm from, at least. Hunting culture is strong, but just definitely not focused around turkeys as much as it is, which is cool because I really enjoy turkey hunting. But like a majority of the population where I'm from, they don't give a shit about a turkey.
That's the thing that has been so fascinating to us. And like, what was it like growing up in the turkey hunting capital of the world, if you will?
Well, starting as a little kid, my dad had, and I mentioned to y'all, and I don't think y'all knew who he was, but a lot of people that'll listen will know, but I started listening to a cassette tape when I was probably Reed's age, probably 8 or 9 years old, of Ben Rogers Lee, which he's from Coffeyville, Alabama, which is about 20 minutes south of where my wife's from. My wife's from between Butler and Coffeyville on the Tombigbee River, but Ben was kind of he was the turkey hunting guru of the 70s and 80s, started winning some competitions, and he was a huge personality. So I started listening to his cassettes as I went to sleep at night. He had cassettes talking about, different calls and mainly using a mouth diaphragm and how to hunt turkeys, So my dad had gotten that some kind of way. But backing up even further, my grandfather was a turkey hunter, and he grew up right here, with a stone's throw from where we are right this minute. And all the way back to being a kid, around probably right after the Great Depression. One of the first stories I remember him telling me was walking way back in what we now call the backwoods, which is some land we own back here. and he killed 2 turkeys in one trip, and they both ended up being somebody's tame turkeys. And he was, that's probably 2.5 miles, as I remember, where he told me he killed them from here. So he had to walk there and then walk back with both those tame turkeys. And I remember him saying those tame turkeys weighed probably double what, any wild turkey around here would have weighed, and he had to tote them both out. But, he was a good turkey hunter. I mean, I've got so many stories. I mean, my mom and I were sitting on the front porch of the house that I grew up in, which my parents live in a new house, or a newer house. Now, it was built in '94, but the house I grew up in was just like a little ranch style house with a porch across the front, and it was thunderstorm coming up one day and thundering, and right here, literally where my house sits, and that's part of the reason I wanted to build it there, just nostalgia, I guess. But there was a turkey gobbling. Every time it would thunder, a turkey would gobble. So my mom calls my granddad, who was here. He worked shift work for a trucking company, and he happened to be home. And the next thing I remember, we heard that turkey gobbling and gobbling and gobbling, and then maybe went inside or whatever. The next thing I remember is looking out the window, and I see him walking up the blacktop road with that turkey over his shoulder. And so, I mean, I was just a little kid then, so I've been involved in it. And then he kind of got my dad started turkey hunting in the 70s, and another friend down the road, and my dad turkey hunted together through the 70s and 80s, and it was just, we've got pretty good turkey hunting around here now, but back then it was, it was just nothing to see in the wintertime. See a flock of 40 or 50 at these. There's a dairy farm across the way, and pastures around here. I mean, it was a lot more turkeys then than it is now. So in the spring, I remember the first Primos video, we all gathered up over at my dad's, him and his buddies, and had a fish fry, and we watched the very first Truth One, Primos turkey video. I remember that as a little kid. So it's just, I could sit here and talk all night long with stories like that, that it was just something you did, and it's something I loved. I remember going with my dad before I could tote a gun, and watching him kind of do it. That's how you learn. He sit there and be quiet and just watch, and then started taking. And I actually took me a while. I think I probably started toting a gun some when I was probably 7 or 8 years old. I probably didn't kill my first turkey, and it was a Jake, till I was 11 or 12. I could look back and figure it out. My mom kept pictures and everything. It's pretty neat to have, but so it took me a little while. I don't
think that's necessarily a bad thing, though, either. No. It kind of just feels it a little more, where you got to work for it a little bit, and then you finally.
I missed my fair share before I ended up knocking one down. I remember being pretty frustrated it was like, maybe I was 7, and then 8, and then 9, and then finally killed one when I was 10. I was just like, by that point I was so hooked, but I do think that that's part of the fun of hunting, is that. We were just talking about today, like you start going a little crazy when you're hunting. You can start being like, I gotta just keep going. And when you're a kid, I feel like that's even more. He just locks you in.
Yeah, I told you about Reed this morning. The neighbor we were hunting fairly close to the line. We could hear the neighbor calling, and this turkey was gobbling at the neighbor, and he wouldn't gobble at me. Which that hurt your pride a little bit. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't want to say anything. I was trying to be a good example, but. After a few minutes, he's sitting on the other side of a tree. We're around a big blowdown.
Have you heard this? No.
And I look over there, and he's just big old tears rolling out of his eyes. And I'm like, man, what's going on, dude? Are you all right? And he's like, man, he calls. Every time he calls, the turkey gobbles, and we call, and he won't gobble. He's going to kill him. And I was like, man, I said, you can't let it get to you that much, or you're not going to enjoy this very much. I said, that's going to happen a lot.
That's awesome, though, that he's getting after it so hard.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For example, Reed, who he's talking about, 2 boys and a girl. Reed, the other night, they were showering, and we're, 100 yards away from the house, and the window must have been open, or maybe it wasn't, on the bathroom door, and he's showering, and the whole time he's just working. He's just, just nonstop.
I was standing at my truck, tinkering around, getting stuff ready for the morning, and Ted walks out, and I'm just like, 10 minutes straight. He's been in there. I'll hook. It's so hilarious.
He's hooked.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good transition, because I think you're a good person to talk to, or you'd be a good person for someone to listen to who's trying to get their kids into the outdoors, because I think you put a lot of thought into it, and I think you're a pretty good example for them.
Yeah, well, that's, we have a lot of fun. We live here on our property, so hunt a lot of a lot of public land when I go out of state, obviously. But around here, living on the property, the kids get to interact and, not just enjoy it all the time as far as recreation, but they get to work, and I like that aspect of it, and they get to enjoy it. So we've got some timberland here and some ponds. So fishing and hunting is just, that's something they really get to do every day. They probably take it a little bit for granted, but there's just so many tools in today's time, that even, I'm not that old, and y'all aren't either, but we just didn't have a lot of what they have now, the shot and the specialized guns for kids, and the blinds and decoys and things like that. And the one thing that I've tried to do that I wanted to do, that I felt like, growing up, we didn't have any of that, and I knew how much I loved it. So I wanted to kind of take all that away and do it with my kids, what I would call a more pure turkey hunting scenario, where, none of my kids have ever yet have shot one, and I don't have anything against blinds or decoys or anything like that. I kind of wanted them to do it the way I did it. So they all three have killed turkeys, just sitting beside a tree, no decoys, kind of calling them up, getting in a situation where we could get them close enough. And we've got some good turkey hunting. Don't be fooled by that. We've got good places to go. We're very fortunate. They're very fortunate, and I am too, that we've got good private land to do this on. But, that's one thing I did with them, just kind of tried to start them out like I was, and kind of my thought process with it was, when they get older, if they want to try, other things and other ways, that's fine. But I at least wanted them to get their first couple. Mm-hmm. I guess maybe more of an old school way. I don't even know a good way to say it, but
That's what I think. That's what I think is so great about turkey hunting, is like, there's so many little details that you got to pay attention to. Mm-hmm. And I think it just makes you so much of a better sportsman and woodsman right off,
if you
that
do
you can
it.
take into all other hunting, because they're just so finicky.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I don't know, just escalates your hunting a lot faster.
Well, and I think, too, it's exciting when you do try something new and it works, but it's also okay to, back off and change again. Because, when I first started turkey hunting, I was the same way. We didn't use decoys. We weren't
blinds.
Blind. We were sitting against a tree. I would sit in between my grandpa's legs, and my dad would either be hunting somewhere else or sitting right there behind us. It was doing exactly what we're doing now. And then I went through a phase where it was dude, decoys are sweet, and all of a sudden we were just decoying like crazy, and then to the point where I personally don't use that anymore. Again, nothing against it. It's just, it can be whatever you want it to be. And I think that getting started like that it almost sets you up for failure a little bit.
Yeah.
You're going to make some mistakes when you hunt that way. And I think that part is what is the hook.
Yeah.
Maybe not for every kid, but I would say across the board, it seems like it would be a little bit more consistent of, if you fail, then you're hooked.
Yep.
Because it's just you start shooting baskets, right? And you're shooting baskets and you're missing. And you're like, man, this is fun, but I want to make it. So you keep doing it and you keep practicing. So when you're hunting, it's kind of that same thought, I guess.
We've got a field down here in the middle of our place that my dad built, I don't know, 8 or 10 or 12 years ago probably. And it's just been a turkey magnet ever since he built it. Well, it's probably been 15 years ago. And if you had a strutter, I could take those kids down there and we could have a blind set up on the edge of the field and put that strutter out there, and every one of them could kill 1 or 2, sometimes 3 turkeys a year. Mm-hmm. Literally this field, if you kill one out of it, there's going to be one, because the hens come there. They just love it. It's clover, and we've got some corn on the upper side of it that we plant, and then I've got some chufas down in the bottom, so they've got a little bit of everything, and there's literally turkeys there all the time. And it's one of those places you could take a strutter decoy. And in fact, Keith and I have talked about just trying to go down there and make some videos, just because it'd be a neat place to do it. But I just didn't want them in that scenario where they expected that every time we went, we're going to there's going to be success, and to your point, I have intentionally put all three of them in some situations that I knew we were not going to kill the turkey. I mean, this morning, we had to leave the woods at 8.
And this morning, you literally made your son cry.
Yeah. Well, we had to be at church at 9, so we had to leave at 8. And I, on any other morning, we would have went on down in the bottom closer to where the turkey was and got closer. We might not have killed him, but I didn't want to get in a situation where he comes up just where we can barely see him, but we can't shoot him, and then we got to get up and leave. So, we're basically sitting back on the edge of a bottom trying to call him up, and I'm thinking the whole time, I'm like, this ain't, not going to happen. Big, wide open bottom. But it's a lot of fun. I've got Elizabeth. She's 13. Girls are, it seems like to me, they're probably not as competitive about it as boys are, so she's a lot more measured in what she does. She's very rarely not going to take a bad shot. She's not going to rush a shot. Mm-hmm. She's just a lot more calculated. I don't think she's ever mangled a deer or a turkey or lost one or missed. So she's, and she's killed a couple turkeys and several deer, and been in some pretty tough situations for a kid to make it happen. Like I said, sitting beside a tree in the woods in Mississippi, and even though we're hunting private land birds, I mean, these birds get hunted on every, all the way around. There's all our neighbors hunt. We hunt. Several times a week, if not every day. But and then you got the boys. Reed, who we've been talking about. He's ultra competitive and into it, and that's all he does and all he thinks about. And then Luke, the little one. It's just funny to see their personalities. I mean, he enjoys it. He's killed 3 deer this year. Done great. Made pretty good shots on all of them. Then he killed his first turkey this year. I was trying to help him with the gun, and he basically told me to get out of the way. If I'd get my hand off the gun, he'd kill this turkey.
At all.
Yeah. And he, he's probably not as infatuated with the whole deal as Reed is, but as a 7-year-old to get up at, you bump him in the morning, when it's time to go at 5:30, he's up, got his clothes on, he's ready to roll. He enjoys the process. Now he doesn't walk around and call and hoot and, all that stuff all the time, but he's always there ready to go, so it's just kind of neat seeing the differences in the three of them. And
I talked to Luke today. He cracks me up because he'll run up and he'll just look at me. like say something to me, I was like, you been turkey hunting at all recently? He's like, nah, I'm just kind of waiting on everybody else to get a bird.
Yeah, he was the first one in the family. He got his on March the 8th, which was opening day of youth season, so he put quite a bit of pressure on everybody else.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, especially his siblings. Little brother got his right off the bat.
That's pretty hilarious. And then you said Reed will just go fishing and he'll just be gone for hours and hours, and you go down there and he's sure enough just still casting away, just totally into it.
Well, we finally figured out that we were not gonna, I'm not gonna go bad dad, whatever you want to call me maybe, but I'm not gonna go sit at the pond for hours on end. I'm not a huge fisherman. Fish a little bit with him, but finally we just told him, we're like, look, you can go by yourself, but you got to wear a life jacket at all times. So in July, when it's 96 degrees here, he's got one of those foam life jackets on. He's standing down there, sweat just dripping off of him. He's fishing for hours, so kind of feels I'm ready for him to get old enough to where, we don't have to worry about him down there. We can tell him he can take his life jacket off so he doesn't have a heat stroke.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea, though, really, for safety. It's like, obviously the odds are low, but that's a good
just
idea.
A little peace of mind,
But it is hilarious that he stands there and just takes it, basically takes a beating from the heat all day, just keeps after it.
Yep.
We need to do a podcast with those two.
That would be funny. Yeah.
Honestly, it would be hilarious.
That'd be a rodeo, I can assure you.
Yeah,
be hard for anybody to decipher.
We're gonna have to
they try to talk over one another.
We played baseball with them for, I don't know, an hour and a half at least the other day. And, oh man, it was hilarious. Just a funny time. they definitely have the competitive side.
Oh,
like
yeah.
you said, that's good, and it's cool to see kids be excited about hunting, and to me, I've been thinking about that more and more. Like, that's just so important.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I noticed, I was looking at our demographic page, and it's just like everybody is, the sweet spot is really 25 to like 45 for like watching our videos or following with our stuff. But it's like kids are just like pretty low, that under 25 or under 18, it's pretty low. So it's good that they're excited about it, and I'm sure they're going to school telling their friends, showing them pictures and stuff like that. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, this is a big deal. It's a big deal for them to have, you guys. They look up to y'all, and y'all are always super friendly to them. So that's a big deal. We always enjoy having y'all, and they always look forward to getting to see you guys when you come. So
I just think of how much trouble it probably kept me out of just all the hunting I was doing, in high school and stuff like that. All the other things you could be doing other than that, it's just like there's a lot worse things you could definitely be doing.
No doubt.
So
no doubt.
I think it's a good thing to be kind of addicted to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Ted, you got a little sweat going, bud.
Basketball and ice cream.
Basketball and ice cream, yep. Got a little sugar high going on.
We were talking about turkey hunting down south, and like talk about a little bit of that competition side of it. Like, I know you've mentioned, like, I've seen friendships get torn apart, and that's something that I remember when I first came down here. It's just like, man, like, these guys like are real, and not to say that isn't the case in different parts of the country, because it certainly is, but it definitely seems like across the South, from I guess I haven't hunted in Louisiana yet, but from Mississippi to Georgia certainly is.
It seems like deer up north is the same as turkeys down here.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everybody's.
Well, you even mentioned the other day about the area that we're hunting. It's just like people walk all over that place for a turkey, but if you're going to go out there deer hunting, you're probably not going to run into many people until later in the year. So it's just, I think, if I were to hear that before I came down here, it'd be hard for me to even believe, but it's definitely the truth.
No doubt. I don't really know why certain regions of the country are so different. I mean, I know out west, like where you live in Colorado, y'all have got 10 or 12 species of big game, so it's a lot of different things there to get your attention. Here in Mississippi, we've got white-tailed deer, and we've got turkeys. A lot of people fish. You got some hogs on the side, coyotes, that sort of thing. But I mean, deer and turkeys are the big thing, and honestly. Even when my dad started in the 70s and 80s, turkey hunting was not near about what it is now, but the guys that were doing it were super passionate about it. You've heard all the stories, guys would go to great lengths to keep, if they heard a turkey, to keep it a secret, to mislead people about where they were going. And I'm not even really that much like that, but back in the day, that was a big deal. And then I don't really know what in the last 15 or 20, 30 years has gotten turkey hunting, to explode like it has. But, it sure seems to have really taken off among the, even, younger than us, it just, it's kind of surprising to me, to be honest with you, after a 4 month long deer season, I think we have, that starts in October and ends in basically the 1st of February, middle of February. If you're in South Mississippi, you'd kind of think, people will be ready for a break. Let's just, chill out. But, it's a very short turnaround here from, like I said,
crazy.
If you deer hunt to February 15th and south of Highway 84, which is a little south of here, but just say January 31st here, you've got, basically 5 weeks, which goes by so fast, because February around here is kind of, we do all our burning and things like that on our property here, and, getting spraying clover fields, which I was doing today. I mean, it's just a lot of stuff that goes on in February. And before you can blink, it's turkey season, And
the crazy thing is, to me, is that the short break, because we do a ton of hunting all the way up into January, and I'm always thinking, man, those guys in Mississippi, man, they literally are deer hunting until darn near turkey season. It's like there's no transition time frame.
Yep.
To me, like when you're in the Midwest, it's like you got deer season ends, and then you got that cold short day time period where it's just kind of you're kind of getting by. Yeah, you're kind of getting by, and then it starts to give you a little taste, but it's like all of a sudden here it's just like deer season's over, turkey season. Basically, right? I mean, what, 4 weeks difference, or basically.
Yep. We finished May 1st. A lot of the northern states go on into.
Is that why you started traveling a little bit? Is just to extend your season?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I love going to the Northeast. I guess I really hadn't been turkey hunting anywhere that I didn't love.
Yeah.
There's a few states that I'm not super excited to really go back to for one reason or another, but all the northeastern states I've had a blast, and you can hunt, like you guys said, clear into June. So, I mean, if you're a turkey hunter, I mean, it's that's a big deal.
What's been your favorite state other than Mississippi?
Gosh, that's such a hard question.
Rattle off a couple maybe that just stand out to you.
For a while, and I hadn't been there in a little while. I understand that it's gotten pretty crazy up there in the last couple of years, but for a while, Tennessee was one of my favorite places that I was going. I got to go up there kind of when it was booming, really, it was really hot. Like I said, I had some family and friends in some really good places up there that I could go hunt with. Gosh, a lot of the northeastern states that I really enjoyed: Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire. I really enjoyed Michigan. It was fun. It was just a fun way to hunt. Gosh, What
do you mean by that? What was the way of hunting up there?
Honestly, and this is going to sound super lazy, but a lot of the eastern states, you certainly can. The far northeastern states that I've been in, it's a lot of. It's not a lot of super rural areas. I mean, I've hunted around a lot of population, and you hunt out of the truck a good bit, and you can just cover a lot of ground and listen for birds. I know in Michigan we were hunting, a bunch of dirt roads and stuff, but I mean, it was good to drive in the truck, and you could move a lot and listen, and I just really like to cover a lot of ground like that. I hate to spend a lot of time in the morning walking into a place, a couple miles walking in, or a mile even, and you get all the way in there and you don't hear anything, you're a mile and a half, 2 miles back to the truck before you can even move anywhere else. I enjoy staying mobile, and it's not I don't mind walking. It's just, I've told you guys down here, it's something I've always said, it kind of, there's some guys that kind of frown on the guys that run around in their trucks, but I mean, I've just always had good luck finding birds, moving a lot.
As far as locating turkeys, it's certainly more effective.
Yeah.
To just be close to a vehicle. I mean, I think one difference that I always see for myself now compared to when I was younger is when I was younger and I was hunting around home, I'd have done that all prior to the season. So all my pins or whatever, I guess at that point I didn't even have a smartphone, so I wasn't running pins, but I knew that pull off.
Right.
I had heard turkeys there. I knew that pull off. I'd heard turkeys there, and down the line. And what's different about the way I feel like we do it now is we're just doing that on the fly, and a lot of times that's why it takes us 5-6 days sometimes to kill or however many days.
A lot of days.
However many days it's been for us.
More than we'd like to admit.
Yeah, but it's just because you don't have that. And on the other hand, I have found just to be on the other side of it is like sometimes I feel like, man, if I just walk straight up 2 miles in, it's just like that's where the unpressured turkeys are going to be, and those are the ones that come running in where I feel sometimes I get in this bad habit where I start driving around. I keep hearing the same turkeys that everybody else is doing the same thing I am. And those are the ones that end up being weird because they've been bumped. They've been shot at, just like what we did this morning. It's like, it's like those turkeys that are closer to the road.
Well, I end up in a lot of places that, like a lot of guys that are doing what I do, you go to a state and you get there in the evening you don't have time to go scout. So your first get your feet on the ground, it's dark, and you're basically, all you're looking at is an aerial. So getting out and riding around and seeing what the lay of the land is, how many vehicles, how big of an area that you've got to go into, I mean, that's super important, and that kind of drives, how you hunt from there. But like in Virginia, we were hunting some big tracks, so we would park and, like you're saying, walk in, a mile was no big deal to walk in a mile on some of those, I call them mountain roads. They were, old logging roads and stuff, and get way back in there. And, but you felt reasonably sure if you made that walk, you were going to be into birds, either going or coming or whatever. Had pretty good success.
That's the cool thing about like those Appalachian states is like what you're talking about. You can just get on one of those logging roads, and I mean, you can go for as many miles as you could probably walk before it gets light out. In a lot of situations, you can find a tract of land that's big enough where you can really get out there.
Yeah, those smaller northeastern states, though I've spent a lot of time in the truck just running around looking and listening. Sometimes you're hunting in the edge of town. I know in Connecticut last year, I mean, it almost makes me nervous. I mean, honestly, I went to to some management areas. I don't remember what they state game lands or whatever they call them up there, and there were so many people out hiking and biking, and it was almost like those weird, but those were busier than like your, not necessarily your in the city type stuff, but your stuff right out on the edge of town, where around houses and stuff, and land that was legal to hunt, and so your big tracts of public land and stuff were so overrun with people, it ended up pushing me out of those areas and into some more, more heavily populated stuff. It was legal to hunt, but that, I don't know, I just enjoy it all. I mean,
Yeah. What are some of the craziest stories you have from your travels? I'm sure you've had some weird encounters and stuff.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about people that you run into. I had read about a lot about Tom Weddle, the guy that kind of started this. I guess he was the guy that maybe started the lure of the state slam or whatever. And I was in Rhode Island year before last, and we have been hunting in this little area for a while and on a few birds, but really not just absolutely, we were having a pretty hard time. I guess I'll just leave it at that. So anyway, I'm in my truck, of course, going to another spot to see what I can stir up, and going down a little gravel road in the management area, and this guy's walking down the road. I pull up to him and I said, you need a ride? He's like, man, he's huffing and puffing and out of breath and sweating, and he's got a shotgun. I swear it had to have a 30-inch barrel on it. I mean, it was kind of a funny sight. But he was a turkey hunter, so I felt confident, and he's like, yeah, man, if you would, just take me up to my friend. I think he's right around the curve. He said, I kind of got turned around, I ended up out here on the road. He said, I'm pretty sure he's just right up there. But anyway, he hops in the truck and barely got room for this gun, even fitted in my truck. I thought he was going to stick the barrel out the window. It's comical. But anyway, we pull around the curve, and as we're going, we're talking, and I tell him that, I travel and turkey hunt, and he said, well, you're going to like the guy that I'm riding with. And he said, a guy named Doc? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't get it. Yeah, if you travel and turkey hunt, Doc, the traveling turkey hunter. And I'm like, yeah, Tom Weddle. Yeah, I know him. He's, yeah, this guy that I'm about to take you up here and meet, he's the one that put him on his turkeys in Rhode Island, And anyway, we end up going on up there and meeting this older guy. And I mean, just a character, and just to kind of, that was a unique situation, just to, read about a guy like Doc and kind of, watch some of his stuff online. And then, you run into somebody that he's hunted with just out of the blue. I mean, you're in a country with 300 million people, and I hadn't sought out anybody. I hadn't called him asking for a spot or anything. And I just, you know, in Rhode Island, I end up, you know, running into a guy that he's hunted with in the past. And I kind of questioned the story as the older guy was telling me, because I mean, this guy was a nut. You know, I was thinking, I don't know if he made this up, but it was all, I was like, he couldn't have made all this up. So anyway, later on, I got a chance to talk to Doc, and I said, hey, you know, I met your old buddy up in Rhode Island, and he immediately called his name, and he's like, yep, he's a character. He said, I know him, and I think maybe they had made a hunt or two together or something while they were up there. But anyway, just funny. But you know, the coolest thing and the thing I enjoy the most and the thing I look forward to in the future is traveling back around and just seeing people that I've met. I mean, so many people have been so gracious. You know, me and a buddy of mine were hunting in Vermont and ran into some people there and pulled over to ask them to hunt, and it was a lady outside by herself. I never will forget. I was nervous to stop because I didn't want to make her nervous. We were kind of in a rural area. She was at one of these old pretty red barns, and she was outside working in the flower bed, and a buddy of mine named Cody was with me, and he was like, pull over there. There's a gobbler strutting like out behind the barn. It was obvious it was their land, you know, and he's like, let's ask her if we can hunt, you know. And I'm like, man, I don't want to pull up here. That lady's going to be nervous. Two guys pulling up in camouflage, you know, and I'll pull over. I'll ask her. So we pull up there, and I said, all right, get out and ask her. He said, I'm not getting out. And I'd already pulled up, you know. I mean, I wasn't going, yeah, we're committed now. And I'm like, he's like, I ain't getting out. I ain't getting out to ask her. He said, you go ask her. So anyway, I'm like, man, you got to be kidding. So anyway, I get out of the car and go ask her, and you know, I said, we're turkey hunting. We're from Mississippi. And you get the question, you know, you come all the way to Vermont to turkey hunt? And I'm like, she's like, don't y'all have turkeys in Mississippi? I said, yes, ma'am, but this is just kind of what we enjoy doing. And she said, well, let me call my husband. And I'm thinking, oh, boy, this it might not be good anyway. So she calls her husband, and I can hear him through the phone, you know, like, what? You know, and I'm thinking, oh, he's not taking this too well. And the last thing I hear him say is, you tell them just to wait just a second. I'll be right there. And I'm thinking, he might not be too happy, you know. And I said, look, if your husband turkey hunts, we'll just leave. Don't. This is no big deal. There's other turkeys we can go after. No, you wait right here. He wanted you to wait right here. And anyway, he pulls up, and super nice guy. Man, we ended up, you know, kind of told him what we were doing, and I mean, they just treated us like royalty for 3 or 4 days while we were there. They took us hunting on some other private land. He let us go back and hunt behind, you know, his barn, and just got to be friends, you know, and kind of have kept up with him some over the years, texted back and forth, called him up a bird. Another one of his friends took my buddy, you know, he bought a tag, and he took him over into New York to hunt, you know, just, you know, things like that just seem to happen when you meet people and it's in a friendly setting, and it's just, that's a lot of the fun of it to me, you know.
That's my favorite part of coming down here now, is just meeting you and then all your buddies. It's just like, well, we get along with you, so we get along with all your buddies pretty well. So it's fun. It's fun to be able to spend a bunch of time down here.
Yeah.
It is funny, the situations you run into, though, and the people that you meet, and it's just like all of a sudden, like you said, it's like you want to go back and hang out with them at some point. And that's the fun thing about the turkey tour that we do, is it seems like we get to swing east, you know, and just run into a bunch of people that we like hunting with and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's you know, I'm excited about the kids, you know. I mean, it's not every day, you know, kids have the opportunity, if they like to hunt or turkey hunt or whatever. Well, let's take off, you know, when you get out of school, we'll take off and go to Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, you know, and I already know people, know where to go, you know. I mean, I'm just looking forward to stuff like that.
I think it's good for kids to get out and see different parts of the world like that too, especially while they're young, and just see that it's not all the same as, you know, right here where they grew up, which isn't a bad thing, but I think it's a good thing to, like I said, just get out and see that the good and the bad out there, I guess.
Yeah. And people, you know, sincerely enjoy seeing kids enjoy something like that. You know, I've never run into anybody that was, you know, negative about it. Now, I don't run around in the places where the negative people stay that are negative about hunting so much. You know, it's not, you don't hear many anti-hunters down here in Mississippi. So
I also think what's fun about traveling to hunt too, you know, for the most part, there's always folks that have this opinion that like everybody's out to get them, and like, oh, it's going to be a bad interaction. And it's like, for the most part, pretty much everybody's got a kind bone in their body, you know, like, so you bump into, so just like with your story with the woman at the Red Barn, at first you're like, you got a little bit of nervousness pulling up there, and you're like, I don't know. And then you end up talking to them, and they're just like, oh, yeah. I mean, it's like, we were in Maine. There was a couple times we'd go up to the houses, and, you know, it's really strange, but if it's unposted, you can legally hunt there. But in the reg book, it says that you should still ask.
Right.
It's like the written, unwritten rule.
Right.
But so we would go ask and just confirm. And there was some like times I ran into these older characters that seemed like they were just going to be grumpy as all get out, you know. They'd be like, what? What do you want? Yeah, go ahead. You know, and then they'd start, and then they'd like, it's like even within that like grumpy kind of attitude, it's like they're actually being really friendly to me, and it's just.
I got everything from, let's see, thank you for coming to ask to why did you ask? It doesn't have a posted sign. And I would always tell those people, well, I asked because where I'm from, you don't just, you know, it doesn't even have to have a posted sign. It is considered posted. Yeah. But I did forget you asked cool stories. This is a cool story. It just popped back into my mind. So me and my buddy went up to hunt Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And for whatever reason, the way you could hunt in Vermont and Maine, we were hunting one day cut off at noon, and the other states you could hunt all day. So we were basically hunting in Vermont and jumping all the way across New Hampshire hunting into Maine. And we would, you know, we were doing that every day, driving back and forth. Well, finally we had gotten our birds in Vermont and Maine, and we had to fly out of northern New York. I don't remember if it was Syracuse or where it was, but somewhere in northern New York. We were flying out the next day at like 1 o'clock. So we left Maine that afternoon, and we're coming down, and I'm sitting there thinking the whole time, I'm like, you know, not going to get anything in New Hampshire. We start talking about it. I'm like, you know, we just don't have enough time. It's just no way, you know. And so my buddy starts looking on his phone, and we're like, how do we find where we had really not seen any good habitat that we were really satisfied that we wanted to go buy a tag, even if we had enough time. So how do you figure out, you know, where the turkeys are? So he just starts Googling on his phone, and he finds where turkeys were actually, a little article talks about where they were reintroduced. So we thought, well, there's got to be turkeys there, and it wasn't far off the route. So we're riding back through there and start kind of riding around, and it's more what you want to see, you know, some open ground. And we actually saw some turkeys, saw a young high school kid that was turkey hunting, and you know, he was walking out to his truck, and we talked to him. We're like, you know, turkeys around here? And he's like, oh yeah. He said, this is my family land. He said, I'm gonna be back in here in the next morning, but just go to the next road over. He said, you'll hear a bird on that road. And we were like, okay. So anyway, we go have supper that night, and while we're eating supper, I forget what store it was, but there was a store right across the way we could buy tags. I told Cody, I said, I'm gonna get a tag. I bought a tag at 9 o'clock that night. Did just what the high school kid said, next road over. And I forget what time I shot that turkey, like it, I don't know, I don't want to incriminate myself, but like it was legal shooting time, but it was early. Like 6 o'clock, the turkey was dead, 5:50 or something, you know, crazy. I mean, as soon as his feet hit the ground, I mean, I was on him, and I killed him. And anyway, we had to take it and physically check it in. So back to reading the article about turkey restocking, it was written about this guy that had been real involved in restocking turkeys in New Hampshire. So we go down to the just look on our phone. Here's the check station here. You know, it's not too far away. Pull up, and it's like this old general store with it's an old wooden A-frame building with a porch on the front, real cool. Got some rocking chairs sitting on the front, you know, all the stickers on the glass, you know, and just one of those cool old stores, you know. So we take our turkey up there and put it up on the porch, and I walk in, you know, and tell the lady I'm here to check a turkey. I notice an old guy sitting over there in a rocking chair, just rocking. And anyway, he didn't speak, and I didn't speak to him, you know. But anyway, the lady, yeah, we'll get you checked in. She comes out and measuring, and I look over there at the guy when I walk back out, and he had a New Hampshire Game and Fish hat on. And I said, well, the old hat, you know, and went over and introduced myself, and he kind of looked familiar. And I said, you turkey hunt? And he said, well, as a matter of fact, he said, I was involved in getting these birds put back around here. He was the guy that the article that we read had been written about. And come to find out, he basically, he had gotten a good bit older. He was up in his 80s and pretty feeble, had a hard time getting around. But he would go sit at the check stations, the different one every morning, just to see what had been brought in. He'd always been interested in turkeys, and he actually went out to his truck and got a couple. I can't remember why he kept them, but I thought it was neat because he made us a couple. He got us a couple of newspaper clippings where they had laminated them, where he had done these restocking things and let us keep them. Anyway, I took a picture with him, so I've got a picture with him, and it's just kind of a neat story. You know, we read that article the day before and ended up there, and then ended up getting to meet that guy. You know, and he actually told us, this is another, you know, just testament to how friendly people are. He said, if you ever end up back up here, he said, look me up. You can come hunt over at my place. I've got about 130 acres. And he said, I don't turkey hunt anymore, but be happy for you to shoot one on my place.
That's awesome.
So, you know, just, I don't know, stuff like that just happens, you know, when you're out and about.
Yeah. What was it you were telling me about having shot that turkey, the smaller bird with the long spurs and the different coloration? What was that story?
Yeah, that was down in Alabama where my wife's from, on the Tombigbee River in southwest Alabama. So I've been told that was one of the few places in the country that birds were not killed to, you know, basically extinction for market hunting. And that was one of the places back in the 60s and 70s. They were actually going to trap birds to transplant them back around the country. So I just always heard the older people talk about, you know, the original turkeys. You know, if you ever killed a gobbler that was kind of one of the original strain, and I don't know if there's any truth to this or not, that they would be a lot smaller and that they would have, you know, super sharp spurs. Typically they were older because, you know, they were smarter or whatever. But anyway, my wife's cousin and I killed one down in Alabama on the Tombigbee River, and when I went out to get him, he had 1.25 inch needle sharp spurs, and I think he weighed 12. One of the few turkeys I ever weighed because of how small he was. He weighed 12 pounds. He was jet black. I mean, he did have barring on his wings, but I mean, he was just coal black, like unusually black. And he didn't have any feathers, you know, on the underneath of him, basically, I guess where he had been breeding so much. But just a little bitty turkey, but you could just tell. I mean, he seemed like an old turkey. But I've always heard my whole life that that's some of the original, you know, and I've heard people down there that, you know, talk about it. Now, these are not biologists, but, you know, some of the original turkeys that were, you know, have been here forever, for however long turkeys have been on the landscape. There was definitely something different about that turkey, though, than any one I've ever killed. I can say that for sure.
Yeah.
I've never killed another one like it.
That's pretty cool.
Did you tell he was different when he was coming in?
No, I didn't. I don't know. I kind of go to a different place when it gets close to that. And I didn't get to see this turkey for a long time before I shot him. As a matter of fact, my intent was to, you know, let my cousin shoot, or Susan's cousin shoot. But the turkey actually circled us and came around where he couldn't shoot. So when he basically came between two cypress trees, about 2 feet in between them, and when he came in between, I shot. And
that's always my intention too, and I kind of give him that.
Yeah, out the left side. Yeah, draw him around. But I don't know if there's any truth to that. And somewhere else, I've heard some people talking here recently that maybe the Osceola had a bigger range back in the day, that maybe they ranged further up in here, you know, around the Mississippi and Alabama Gulf Coast, and even up through the panhandle of Florida, you know. So, I mean, you could have easily mistook this turkey for he was a swamp gobbler, lived in the Tombigbee River swamp, so he could have easily been mistaken for an Osceola. You know, looked as much like an Osceola as any Osceola I've ever killed. So
It's interesting, really, like the variation, because after you told me that story, I was telling you about how my buddy Keith and I killed turkeys right off the same tree, and they were like essentially different subspecies. The one looked like that Merriam with all the white, and the one that that was the second one, and that was a pair, actually. Those two came in, and they were both completely white, and the one that he shot was like, I mean, fit the bill of a Rio. had that real tan. But I'm pretty sure every other turkey that we had shot on that trip was all more like the one that I had shot, the white.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what? It's very strange.
Yeah.
Another really weird one, I mean, this is kind of off on a tangent, but another weird one is I never knew Oregon has Rios in the mountains. Like where you would expect there to be Merriams, they are Rios.
I guess that's where they transplanted them from probably Texas or Oklahoma. In a population boom.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
They're crazy, though, because you're, like, hunting these turkeys that you're like, well, this should be, it's Merriam habitat. It's exactly fits the bill for Merriam's habitat. And there's Rios in there.
I think, Hawaii has, I think they've got Rios in Hawaii.
Pretty sure.
It's pretty mountainous over there in a lot of places from what I understand.
Have you done Hawaii yet?
I hadn't. No. That's kind of what I've been.
We should do that together.
Yeah, I've been.
We'd like to go there.
Warb actually mentioned that as well, so Susan will be making that trip with me for sure. The kids say they're going, but I'm not sure. I'm gonna let them go.
Mindy claims all the spouses and girlfriends and whatever else are going on that one too.
Yeah,
so.
that'd be fun.
Dad, get you a girlfriend.
Have to find one for that trip.
Think about that if you're listening to this. You could be Ted's date to Hawaii.
Maybe that would be a giveaway, a THP giveaway. Hey, that might work out pretty good for you, Ted. I'd probably take that if I was you.
I would take that. Take us up on that.
I don't know how many women viewers we got, unfortunately, for Ted.
Also on that
but the word
demographic
can get
page.
around.
Also on that demographic page I was looking at, we're at 93% male, 7% female. So not a lot.
We talked about sending
high quality.
Slim picking.
We talked about sending my girlfriend Whitney and Mindy and probably Bethany out, just like with the have somebody film and just have them try to figure out a turkey hunt. I think that'd be pretty entertaining content.
No doubt.
They'd probably get one, really.
Yeah, probably.
Probably
might not want to do that.
Yeah, probably wouldn't overthink every little detail.
Oh, he's got one. We'll just sit here and call. Just wait.
Here.
Probably a good idea.
Sure, that'd be hilarious. So you talked about the different generations of turkey hunting in your family. Like, what has changed as far as the numbers? I know you talked about at one point, like your dad not even seeing anything or hearing anything one year.
Yeah. Well, we went, I think it was really, really good here in the 70s and 80s, and I can remember a little bit of the 80s. I was born in 79, so 86, 87, 88, in that range. I mean, things like that don't happen anymore. You'd be sitting at the dinner table across the road and just looking at that little pasture north of my parents' house that y'all pass every morning. And I remember seeing a couple gobblers and 8 or 10 hens strut out through that pasture. I mean, that hasn't happened. I can't even tell you the last time. So, yeah. I mean, it was nothing, to hear 8 or 10 or 12 turkeys through those years around here. And they probably had a little more ground even then because, like I said, turkey hunting wasn't as serious and it wasn't as much competition for ground. But I remember about 1990 or 91, right here in particular, and I don't know why, but just right back here on our place, I remember my dad heard one turkey gobble in 90 or 91, and it was a Jake, and he ended up killing it. And, nowadays we wouldn't even.
So that basically just went from.
It went from everything to just nothing.
That's crazy.
You have no
real reason for that.
No, I mean at the time, there was a lot of things discussed. We had a lot of poultry operations around here, and everybody was putting chicken litter on their fields. And I've been in meetings even in the last month where we were talking about that with biologists and stuff, and the biologists say there's no, facts to support that that's something that kills turkeys. I mean, maybe it could or whatever, and there's a lot of people that swear by it, but I have no clue. Maybe one day I need to ask my dad what changed, if there was anything that changed in that time period. I mean, I know there was some timber harvesting going on back here, but I mean, there's been timber harvesting going on back here, all my life, but I mean, there was a pretty significant timber harvest around that time, and that may have been it, but you wouldn't think you would go from here in 7, 8, 10 turkeys in the mornings to, you go all season and you hear one turkey gobble. I mean, that's, so that's always in the back of my mind. If we go a morning around here now and don't hear a turkey, I'm thinking, okay,
what's wrong?
Yeah, what's happened? All this stuff they're talking about is happening here now, or we don't have any turkeys, and then the next morning you go, you'll hear 3 or 4 or whatever, but
my dad always talks about, there was a day we were hunting in Minnesota. It was me and my brother and him, and he's like, at the end of the day, it's always about weather, and he's right. If you got the weather, you got a bunch of cool mornings, and you get that one morning that's just like 10 degrees warmer, and it's sunny and it's calm. It's like, yeah, generally speaking, you hear more turkeys. But there was one really distinct day where we were hunting in Minnesota, where it's like every morning we were hearing a turkey back in this area. And it's like, man, this is pretty good back in here. And then the one morning, the weather broke and it was perfect. It was like, how is there even this many turkeys in here? I mean, we heard like 7 birds, and we'd been hearing one a morning.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, it's just like they're literally gobbling everywhere.
That happens here too.
It's so weird. And
Yep.
I mean, it happened to us yesterday.
Well, me and you were out there talking the first morning that it was cool and clear and no wind. We were like, man, they're going to be screaming this morning. I remember texting y'all about 2 hours later. I'm like, I ain't heard nothing. Y'all were like, yeah, we hadn't either. And we were so sure it was going to be, it was going to be just a killer morning, and I mean, nothing. And it just.
And that's why hunting turkeys is hunting turkeys. It's like they're never going to be overly predictable. That's for sure.
That's for sure.
Do you guys have any more questions or any things you want to add in?
Ted, you got to have a question, buddy. Come on, Sport. Think of one.
Stuff wrote down.
Come on, Sport.
Jake's been calling Ted Sport a lot.
He likes it.
Ted takes notes, and he puts his name on everything. That's two unique things about Ted.
I was going to ask how you met, like, Warb and all these guys.
Yep. So, I guess y'all first came here in 2017. Yep. So Lake Pickle with Primos is friends with a good friend of mine, Keith Polk. And I guess Lake had worked with y'all at Midwest Whitetail.
Yep.
And he just called me one day out of the blue and said, hey, I got some guys coming. They're going to be hunting the public land. Would you mind, talking to them? I mean, I met y'all at the Home Depot, and we just kind of.
I don't remember what location it was, but I remember we were standing in a parking lot.
Yep. And y'all, I mean, basically, we just talked, and y'all kind of already had an idea. That's one thing I've been, always been impressed with you guys, and I kind of like to be this way too. I've given y'all places to go, and other people around, friends of mine and stuff, have given you pins of places to go, and typically y'all dive in and just kind of do your own thing. Like, it's take pride in finding your own birds and deer or whatever. But I guess it was 2017, and that's kind of how it got started. Lake kind of hooked us up, and I knew a little bit about the national forest or whatever, and hunted it since I was a teenager, and I don't even remember ever giving them anything that groundbreaking other than telling them, hey, it's east of here on such and such a highway. And we talked generalities for a while, and then they were off. And I don't really remember after that I think we may have came down one night or something, rode down maybe and hung out with y'all or talked or whatever. Yeah. But I don't even know. Did y'all kill a turkey that year?
We did. We ended up killing 2. That's actually the only turkey I've ever killed in Mississippi.
Okay.
Was on that trip, and that was our first public land down south, type experience. And it was funny because we went into it, I had no expectation whatsoever. I mean, coming from having only hunted Ohio and Iowa, I knew what I knew at the time is that Ohio, not so good compared to Iowa. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is a totally different place.
Yeah.
But then we're going to Mississippi, and it's like, I've heard my whole life and watched on TV, and I know the culture is, generally speaking, more excited about turkey than deer, but I didn't really know what that meant. And when we got down here, and you get to actually put your boots on the ground and see the way the land is, and compare that to the other places I'd hunted, there's a lot of similarities as far as people or pulled off places. The difference was for me was the pines and the terrain is so strange. And to this day, Mississippi across the board, when I look at it, I struggle with the way the hills just roll, man. It's like, and there really isn't much of a difference in elevation even. But it's just enough that it puts, you mix the pines and those slow rolling hills together, and it's a bear to hear a turkey. I mean, it really is. And I remember hopping out the first, we like split up, and I went one place and Aaron went another, and our buddy Zach Kurzieski was with us.
That's right.
He went to a different place, and I remember getting out and standing there, and I'm like, oh, here we go. And it was just like, I can't hear anything. It's just like, I'm not hearing any turkeys. And finally, I remember when Aaron and I first heard one, it was like, he was like, do you hear that? And I'm like, I did. But it's like, it sounded so different. And long story short, we ended up calling one in on like pretty early. Aaron called one in, and I was back behind him like 5 yards, and I'm saying, yeah, but I wasn't loud enough, and the turkey comes right into the wide open, and I'll never forget that. Like, here I am, like, trying to really get good footage, and I'm nailing it, but I, like, didn't say loud enough, hey, I'm on him, and that's all he needed, and he hesitated and didn't shoot, and the turkey got away. It's actually the location that we were at today. It was in that same bottom. We had a miscommunication there, and then for the next 5 days, it was just like grind. And then Zach ended up shooting one on the last evening of his 7-day tag. He shot one coming back to roost. The story of that was he had watched the turkey fly out of a tree that morning. He had been kind of hunting that area. He watched one fly out of a tree that morning, and we're like, well, that's our best bet, is to go get as close to that as possible. Yeah. And, I mean, he had to have been coming back to the same exact tree. If you go back and watch that footage, turkey's walking in, literally tilting his head up like this, looking at the branches, and Zach shoots him. And
I remember that now.
That was extremely exciting, because it was our first experience of just really just grinding, trying to figure it out. And I mean, we were spending so much time driving around, hiking in, looking for sign. And we eventually got that turkey. And then the very next night, or next morning, we went to the same location where we had called the one in. And I had a 7-day tag then. And heard the bird gobble. Moved down in there, found fresh tracks and scratching, decided we were going to come back in there later that evening because we were going to go back and we were going to the McDonald's and editing. I remember that. And we came back that evening and we started walking in there and we're like, he's drumming. And all evening we just moved slowly around listening to him drumming, and every time it'd kind of get out of earshot, we'd just move up a little bit and then we'd hear it again. Right at last light, like, and here you can shoot at the half hour after sunset, and it's like, I mean, it's as late as I could honestly ever dream of shooting a turkey. Right. I don't know that I ever will again. We hear this owl hoot, and it's just pow immediately, and he hasn't gobbled all night or all evening. And we've been, trust me, we were calling. And pow, he gobbled, and Aaron just took a glass call and just pop, 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 and he just pow, pow, pow. And I can remember so distinct. It was one of those evenings. It was so calm, and you could hear every step he made the entire way.
That's scary. Like you puke on yourself.
Like eventually, it was so dark, and there was so much there's so much stuff on the ground, and all of a sudden this just shadow appeared, and I mean, ended up shooting the turkey at like 12 yards, but just the intensity of that was so crazy.
2 afternoon hunts too.
Yeah, 2 afternoon hunts, and then actually the next night, we had one fired up, thought we were gonna do the same thing, and he didn't end up coming in, so we figured he was either already up in the tree when he was gobbling a bunch, or he flew up right there because it was getting dark, and ended up going in there the next morning and got right in that zone and We sit down, and it's dark, getting dark, and daylight comes, and never heard him gobble. He's should be on the ground now. Nothing. Call. Pow, and he gobbles, and it's like, whoa, he's been here the whole time, and he's on the ground, and he's like in gun range already. But we were in those pines, and it was thick, and I remember still just having my bead on him so perfect. And Aaron's going, wait. And then he saw something he didn't like. And that's about the time I stopped worrying about the shot being on the camera. That's so first experience ever hunting down here. And that's it in a nutshell. It was hooked.
Yeah.
And I love it because, again, it's just the difference from what you're doing back home, what you grew up doing. You get in a new habitat, and like I said, the pines, man, they're really something different. We joked so much about how crazy these pines are when we first got here. When you get in the stuff that's just like, you look at it and it's a wall, and you're like, man, I gotta go through there to get to this gobble. That part of it's fun, and just the people that are excited about it, and talking to people that are excited about it, and just being a part of that is, it's definitely something special. And you'd have to be, if you lived somewhere else, you'd have to almost be just through the roof obsessed with turkey hunting to come down here and do it, because you're probably going to be surprised at how the unique challenges are just very different than what you're used to,
right.
I would say.
Yeah, it's a unique fraternity of people for sure. I don't really know how to explain it other than no matter where I'm at, the conversation somehow is always going to turn to turkey hunting, and everybody around me knows that we were on a mission trip with the youth from our church after Hurricane Katrina. A couple years after Katrina, we were down in New Orleans doing some stuff or whatever, and we go to this mission camp, and, there's kids everywhere, and we're, my wife and I are the older ones there, and there's this little girl there that's kind of leading a team. She's college age, and she's from West Virginia. And I think everybody kind of knew what I was fixing to do, but anyway, we get to talking to her, and I'm like, so where in West Virginia are you from? And, she's telling me or whatever, and I said, so you live out in the country? She's like, yeah, we live out in the country. Yeah, all our family lives around, What, you got turkeys? She's in, my wife just sitting over there. She's like, no, you're not. We're here on a mission trip, and you're grilling this little girl. And before it was over with, I had her phone number. She had all told me about, that none of her family turkey hunts. If you ever want to come, just call me. I'll get you in touch with my dad. He'll be happy to let you hunt. And I told Susan, I'm like, see, anywhere you are at any time, you might get good turkey hunting property.
That's right. And to get the good turkey hunting property, that's got to be on the front of your mind. So if you're listening to this, take advice from Josh and be thinking about turkeys first. Oh, shit. All right, man. Well, we better get to sleep so we can actually go turkey hunting tomorrow.
No doubt.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Good times, man. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for letting us stay here.
Yeah.
Been great. Anytime.